when we think about a positive male role model being involved in a child's life and the outcomes of them being extremely successful, some would say father. I say male role model because the data also says that when a male role model is involved, the outcomes of children growing up healthy and avoiding incarceration, getting through high school, and going on to be great adults is there.
It's a real honor to be with you, Sheldon. I'm going to give you a bit of a background for people listening. You're a non-for-profit leader, an entrepreneur, and a trailblazer. You founded the Dovetail Project, which is one of the country's premier fatherhood initiatives. And I think that's going to be so important. I'm going to talk all about that. In the past 6 years, you've raised over $5 million serving young fathers from 17 to 24. And you've really committed your life to rewriting the narrative of Black fatherhood. And a couple of things, you've got so many awards. I'm going to read a few. You're a Forbes 30 under 30 entrepreneur. You've received the American Red Cross Community Impact Hero Award. And of course, the Muhammad Ali Humanitarian Award, which is has a special place in my heart because I'm a huge fan of Muhammad Ali. So it's such a pleasure for you taking the time. And I'm really excited for our conversation.
No, I'm excited, Lawrence. I want to thank you again for having us on and giving us an opportunity to talk about some near and dear work to many of our hearts out there, which is fatherhood. So excited about it.
Exactly. Well, Sheldon, can we start with that? Because one thing that I realized coming to the US from England is I grew up with a two-parent household. I was very close to my father. He was my best friend and my hero. And I thought that was normal. And then you come here and you find out that actually that's not so normal, especially today with so many parents from broken homes and absentee fathers. And so I'd love to talk a little bit about just the kind of the void and the struggles for people growing out without their father in the picture.
I love it. And so I would tell you that, when we think about father and we think about our dads and just that love from a parent. So it's a rule in life, right? One thing we can't do is choose who our parents are, right? And the second thing about being a parent, it doesn't come with a map or a manual. So, for many of us out there, I look at that as the lucky ticket, right? So, depending on who your parents are, where you come from, you're not in control of those things and what they know. And so some of us are fortunate enough to have that situation that you just named with your father and him meaning the world to you and being that role model and figure. For some of us like me, my dad was in and out of my life, and he struggled as a teen dad having me at the age of 18. And so when we think about young parents who are 18 years old, barely coming into life and growing up, that is expected. But oftentimes when we are children and we're going through that rigmarole of hurt and pain and why, and I thought he would. That is the advantage and disadvantage between having your father there and not having your father there. But the importance of that male role model and that figure who you get, your traits from and you laugh from and you smile from and you look from, right? You are a part of that great DNA. Dad is everything. And so for us and for me, I've made this my life work and my life journey in impacting fathers, but also shining a larger light on why fathers matter and why we need to continue to empower them and help and support dads.
Mm-hmm. Well, Sheldon, I just want to give a shout out to our mutual friend, Victor Chan, for the introduction. I'm so grateful he got us together. And one of the reasons I was so excited to talk to you is I read this fascinating statistic just a few months ago. It said, when you hear about a child with a single mother is 20 times more likely to end up incarcerated or all these negative statistics, I thought that was for a single parent. What I didn't understand is kids who grow up with a single father and no mother in the picture, it's almost the same. So for me, that shows that it's not, obviously, ideally, you want a two-parent household, but it's the need for boys to have that male father figure, for discipline and for guidance and for all these things. So I thought that was such a fascinating statistic. There's almost no negative correlation between single fathers and two-parent households, which just goes to show the importance of fatherhood.
Yeah. And so I would also chime in by saying, when we think about a positive male role model being involved in a child's life and the outcomes of them being extremely successful. And so some would say father, I say male role model because the data also says that when a male role model is involved, the outcomes of children growing up healthy and avoiding incarceration, getting through high school, and going on to be great adults is there. But also, I'm not a I'll tell you the truth, Lawrence. I'm not a big data guy when it comes to saying, hey, if kids grow up in a single parent household, it could be X or it could be Y, right? Because you have me sitting in front of you today. I would, say as a young man who was a knucklehead and got in trouble, I am every way of a statistic, growing up poor, being incarcerated, failing the third grade, that I still turned out pretty well coming from a single parent household too as well. So I think that that is the battle between what this thing of parenting and fatherhood is. But the truth of the matter is, anecdotally is we know that a child having a mother and father in their lives to be the example and the difference maker are critical. And at the end of the day, for me, that's the greatest thing that matters in the work that I currently do.
No, I absolutely love that. And you were a young dad yourself, and I really love that about your story. Can you talk a little bit about, go back in time to when you became a father? It sounds like it was a real inspirational kind of pivot point in your life. You had that feeling like, now I'm a father for my daughter, like it's time for me to do things right.
My journey was different, Lauren. So when I became a father at the age of 20, one of the things that I felt like in my life, because I was a knucklehead doing things wrong in the street, involved with the wrong people, was that I wouldn't be here, right? So I thought that I would die, right? I thought someone would hurt me and take me from this world because of the things that I was involved in as a young person. And one of the things that I wanted to do was leave a piece of me behind in the world. And so I decided to become a teen. I wouldn't say a teen, a young parent, right? And so for many of us, we have our reasons when we become parents. So I know that baby boy is 4 years old, but if I asked you, hey, what made you come to that moment of, hey, I'm ready to be a dad, right? Your story would be completely different. But my story of being a young father, having my daughter at the age of 20, watching her be born, cutting her umbilical cord, knowing that I needed to make these changes in my life to be a better person, knowing that, I might not be here to see her turn 3 years old, and whatever changes I could make before I'm pulled away from earth, that's what I wanted to do. And that's what I lived off of. That was the journey for me. It really wasn't, hey, my father was in and out of my life, and I think I'm ready to be a dad. It was like, no, I think I'll be dead by the age of 21 or 22 years old. So I want to leave a legacy in the world. And, to my gratefulness and grace that's over me, 16 years later, I'm still here today, impacting the world, fired up, excited, and most importantly, looking to continue to impact young men who think or thought that way, and they're looking for the way out. And that's the work of the Dovetail Project, working with young men 17 to 24 years old who really don't know that way out, who have one way or concept of life that they're thinking about that's driving them, not knowing that there's a larger future in front of them, there's a brighter future in front of them, and with the love of their families, communities, and children, they will reach that destination. So that was my journey.
Sheldon, that's so beautiful, because I think the people that aren't familiar with the South Side of Chicago and some of the struggles that you said, like the crowds you're hanging out with, and the difficulties growing up as a young man in that environment, that for me, when I think back to myself at 20, that wasn't even on my mind that I might not be here in a few years. It's something that I wouldn't even cross my mind. So it's really, I love hearing that. And I love hearing how different, like one thing that I've really changed my mind on, Sheldon, is I used to just look at results, and I didn't understand that the struggles for me and for you, like we had so many different struggles. That's a great example. When we were both 20, we had very different outlooks on life. Mine was much more positive. I had a pretty good direction. I had good support. And you were thinking, I might not be here in a few years, so I want to leave a legacy. For me, that just highlights how different it is for people growing up in different areas.
And I would also say too as well that in that time of, you being 20 and me being 20, and that difference in it, I am a big believer that your path is connected to your journey. And so even when I think about having the opportunity to see my daughter born and leaving the hospital and saying to myself, hey, I wouldn't be here, right? And then looking back now and understanding that, that wasn't normal, that's not normal to really think that way. I still, when people speak to me, they're like, Sheldon, why are you always full of energy? And are you like this all the time? And everything of that nature. But to what you just said, with your life being that at 20 and mine's being what it is now, I feel blessed and fortunate every day that I get a chance to be who I am right now and everything that we're doing.
It's so beautiful. You do have such good energy. The older I get, the more I realize that part of life is just about if you have energy and then you have to channel it the right direction, right? You've obviously learned to channel it in such a beautiful, positive direction. Can we go back a little bit? Because I know that when you were very young, you were kind of a child activist. And I guess for people that aren't familiar with Woodlawn, I do a lot of developments and I work in the south side and west side of Chicago. And it's a different world. I tell my friends on the north side, like, you haven't seen half of Chicago. Chicago is the areas are so different. And I'm really glad to see Woodlawn developing. So right now, Woodlawn has about 32% is just vacant lots. And there's a lot of new development and there's a lot of money being put in there. So the area is really changing. But I can only imagine what it was like for you when you were a young man. It must have been a pretty tough place. Can you talk a little bit about what life was like as a young man growing up there?
So Woodlawn is the place that changed my life. I mean, when you think about the United States and particularly Chicago, and you think about the South Side and so much that you hear, the dynamics of Woodlawn, the tale of two worlds, where the University of Chicago is across the street. There's this big campus, and none of us know what's actually going on, right? Because we're just living in the community. And then there's the other side of the street where reality set in for a lot of us. And so growing up on the South Side, particularly in the community of Woodlawn, that's the place where I played community football. I grew up playing basketball in the neighborhood too as well. But also that's the place where a lot of the scares for me took place. And so I think, again, that journey looked different. At the age of 14, I was extremely poor, right? And so I want to be clear about that because sometimes it's hard for any of us to say it, but I was poor. I was this poor 14-year-old kid who wanted more things in the world, in the universe. And I thought that, hey, look, being a part of this group of people and joining this group and also doing things that we have no business doing to gain money in the underground economic world was the place and way to go. But in that tale, I also must say that it was Dr. Joseph Strickland, who I had an opportunity to meet in Woodlawn, who seen me as a 13-year-old making many of these mistakes and came to me and said, Sheldon, let me teach you how to use your superpower for good, right? You're this big 13-year-old kid, 16, 17, and 18-year-olds are listening to you. Let me show you what to do with that. And so Woodlawn was the start of me becoming a community organizer and picking up the skills of going out to protest and fight for policy and rights and make change in my community. And now today, when you look at Woodlawn, the Obama Center is there. Developments are taking place. The University of Chicago has the neighborhood and community thriving with additional economic developments, and community members are happy because they see a greater day. But that is the place that gave me the roots of what I am today and built me to be this kid who went from 13 up until 17 being a knucklehead and cleaned up my ways towards 21, 22 years old and developed this organization that's been in existence now for 15 years, impacting so many families across Chicago. And so oftentimes when we think of Chicago, we talk about this rap of the city, but the truth is there are agencies like the Dovetail Project and other organizations across the South Side of Chicago who's beautifying our city, making it better, working with the next generation of young leaders and youth to get them on a track that they need to be. But Woodlawn is it is one of the hubs of the South Side. But for me, it's the whole hub. So I'm grateful for you asking about it, and I'm grateful to go down to this journey with you. So
I love what you said about the importance of mentors, because in the beginning of this conversation, that's what you kind of touched on. You said a young man needs either a father figure or a mentor. It doesn't have to be a blood relation. So that's a great example. Can you talk a little bit about what do you think he saw in you? You're 13 years old. Why did those older boys listen to you? Like, what was it about you? Was it just your will, your strength of character, your charisma? Like, what was it? What did he see, and what were they seeing in you?
I can say what he seen in me was what we all see when we look in young people. We see the brightness. We don't see, the things that they're paying attention to as young people who are struggling to arrive into teenagehood and to become adults. And so he's seen something greater. He knew that the voice that I carried and the leadership that was on the inside of me could be used to make our communities better. And so oftentimes as young people, when we're lost, many of us don't have those mentors there. One, and then two, as the first real mentor for many of us, our male mentors, are our father. And so if you are fatherless, that mentor aspect is everything. And so I would just say within myself in that moment of why individuals listened, I just had organic leadership skills in that moment of time because it was nothing else, right? It's just, it's that it factor among men when other men feel that you are the person that everyone should be listening to, but it's what they're listening to. And so that's what he gave me an opportunity to do, which is go out in the community, recruit other youth, build our youth-led initiatives, and to go out and to fight for policy and make change. And what he instilled in me then still carries over now. And I'm paying it forth by impacting other young men and getting them up the greatest path ever, which is fatherhood.
That's so beautiful. What was it about him that made you respect him as a mentor?
I appreciate that question. It was many things. I think in seeing him, and number one, my father was in and out of my life, right? So I yearned that male guidance. Many of us do. Whether we get it when we yearn it or not, I yearned it. But also, Doc at the time was getting his MSW, his Master's of Social Work from the University of Chicago, and he was building his charity from the ground up. And so I never knew what charity was. My mom, we stood in line to get goods and canned goods, and I got my first bike with no seat on it. From standing in the line at an organization called We Can. So I knew of how to ask, and when you were in need, this is where you went to do it. I didn't know how it actually functioned and the way that it worked and how, and what went on. And so with Doc, he would say certain things, when you're 14, 13, and you hear older men say things, and you're like, man, how old are you? You know that, right? And so he was with the day and time. But he had also lived longer and knew how to influence young people that he's seen something greater in, right? And it wasn't like he needed to it wasn't like I was a knucklehead and he had to tell me bad stories about him to get me on board. It really was, hey, look, I'm at the University of Chicago getting a degree. I just started this charity. I'm building this program. I see something greater in you. I want to take you and show you around the country different things. And then I want to bring you back and have you go out into the community. And so that was like having my first job, real responsibility. I'm not leading for no reason. I really get to use my leadership skills for good. He made it cool, right? He made it real cool to do the right thing and to be great. And what a man he is for doing that for not just me, but other young leaders who went through the program during that time who are thriving today across this country.
I love what you said about you paying it forward. It's like when we do something like that, where we're a really good mentor, it's not just the people you're impacting, it's the people they're impacting. It's like ripples on a lake. It just goes out into such a broad, wide range. And I find that so inspiring. It's like so often I can look back at my own life and I had a few pivotal moments with different people giving me something, which at the time may have been so small, but it really did change the trajectory of my life. And that's what he did to you. That's what you're doing to other people. So I think it's just such a good thing to highlight, because even if you're just nice to people and they're having a bad day, sometimes that it can be something so small for you, but it can make a big difference to them. And I think it's such a good message, because we live in a time now where, we're very divided politically as a country. There seems to be a lot of animosity in the air. I think just being a good person and trying to positively impact people is so important.
Yeah, and I would also add that it really does take a village to raise a child. It does take a village to bring about those different aspects of a young person, to get them into greater heights, to be great, right? And so for me, again, growing up on the south side of Chicago, having amazing mentors, being next door to the University of Chicago, being exposed to that institution early on too as well, because no one in my family during that time had ever completed college. So I had no way to know what the University of Chicago was, what it meant, who they are, and what they do. And so having all of those things around and having mentors to say, hey, kid, we see you going to the NFL. Do something better with your life. Hey, kid, we see that you are making the community better. Don't let me catch you back around this corner again. And so a lot of what started to happen became my own fault. I can say in my community, there were leaders who always said, hey, kid, you can do something and be something better to come back to take care of all of us. Be and do that too as well. So many of the times, again, when we think of Chicago, when we think of the South Side, or we think of young people getting in trouble or being involved in things, we never think about it from that aspect. And so I'm just here to say that many of those wounds I inflicted upon myself, and I'm grateful today that I get an opportunity to do things like this, join you and get a chance to speak to the world and talk about issues that are near and dear to all of our hearts. So,
Sheldon, I love that. And that idea of people believing in you, sometimes we need to hear that before we can believe in ourselves. And I remember when I first started boxing, I was very intimidated by the whole Chicago Golden Gloves, the whole boxing scene. I was a young man, and back then I was much more introverted and shy and quiet. And I remember just having people like my old boxing coach saying, you can win this. Just that belief by putting it onto somebody. So those people telling you like, hey, you can do great things, Sheldon. Like, don't limit yourself. Don't go down the wrong path. It's such a small thing. It might just be a few words to you, but it really does make a difference.
It does make a difference, but I think the difference in timing is a young individual actually understanding what that means. And for many of us, when we are 14 to 18, we don't know what that means, right? We're living this teenage life. We think we're going to be young forever. We think we're going to keep hair forever, right? We think we won't ever get gray, right? And then that moment in time kicks in and take place. And so I just think that the greatest people in the world, if you're in the NFL, if you're in the NBA, if you are an actor, you have an executive producer, director, a coach, all of us, even as adults at every level as a professional, if me and you were Fortune 500 CEOs, we would have, executive coaches. So at every level, when you think about life, not just in those teen years, but no matter how old you are, that extra push, that love, or even that challenge, right? That person that tells you, you could do better, didn't work, it forces you, and you're grateful for them later, to think outside the box and arrive to the occasion. So
that idea of, like you said, if you're in any field and you're elite in that field, you have coaches and people that push you and do better. And there's so many people that like being the big fish in the small pond and superior to everyone around. And I love what you said. I'm always trying to talk to people who tell me things that I don't really want to hear, but I know it's for my own growth. And just trying to surround yourself by people who are further ahead along the path than you and you can learn from, I think is so important. And what about right now for you, Sheldon? Do you have people that still push you and challenge you and mentor you as well? Because it's like my wife's a therapist, Sheldon. So she's always taking this difficult energy from her clients. But every therapist is supposed to have a therapist they can also talk to, kind of to get that load off. And I imagine it's the same for you. I can tell you're such a charismatic, high energy person, but it must be when you're always giving your energy to people, sometimes you've got to get it back as well.
Yeah, well, what I teach leaders is you are an electric box, right? You're full of energy. And it is other leader jobs to plug into that line to get that energy. So when we use the phrase, hey, protect the energy, watch the energy around you, what you're doing and the way that it go, right? And so in one phase of being that electric box, you undergo two things. One, you go where, hey, look, at this level, I still need a coach to recharge me. At another level of elite, I am wired to recharge myself because I know when to shut down and when to start back up. And that's making sure you never hit E. But when you hit that 50% mark at the gas tank, that is your E, right? Because there are real things that occur, family, friends, and everything else. And so my secret sauce is the individual that you just named. It's my wife, right? The person that's so close to me that watch me, when I have a face and head full of hair to the smile and look and everything right now, right? She sees the ups, the downs, the all the rounds, but she is the greatest push, the greatest light, the greatest everything for me, particularly at this level, because as you continue to rise, conversations are different and taking things in are different. So, when I look for that counsel, I am a praying spiritual man. I pray and I believe in God. I believe he is my higher being and he will guide me through any and everything that I need. But I am also grateful that when a man finds a wife, he finds a great thing. And so I've been with my wife, me and my wife, we've been together, 15 years. And so this has been extraordinary. This journey has been excellent, but that is my secret sauce in advancing forward. And I am a big believer, again, in protecting your electric box, but understanding as a leader that you do have the electricity within you to empower others to be greater. And don't be mad, if you down and one of them walk up and say, hey, Lawrence, I know you had a bad day today and, baby boy irritate you, but I need to plug in for 1 second to charge up. And you like, come on, so that is what most of us do as people who are not selfish and want to see the world be a better place. But that's my secret sauce. It's my wife.
Well, I concur. I would say the same thing for me. So it hasn't been, we just got to, we're getting to 6 years. So it's a little less than you, but they say, I read a lot of positive psychology and books on happiness. And they say that the two biggest indication of you being happy is you have the right partner in your life and you're doing a job or vocation that really lights up your fire. And I think you're such a good example of that. You said it, you've been together a long time. She's your support and you're doing something that you're not selling your soul to get a paycheck like a lot of people that hate what they do. You're doing something that, you make such a difference in the world. And I'm sure it's not easy, but it utilizes a lot of your signature strengths, your charisma, your leadership, your force of nature. And you must get so much satisfaction in seeing all the positive changes you're doing.
Yeah, I do. That is the part that moves me today. When I started Dovetail Project, I started as someone who was driven from, hey, my dad was in and out of my life. I don't want another kid to feel how this feel, to, okay, now you are this adult male. And what drives you today is seeing these young men cross the stage in front of their families, seeing them kiss their babies, seeing them receive love from people who they just wanted to know, hey, I know I did something wrong, but I'm trying to do it right. And so those drivers for me right now and watching these young men arise to that occasion of for community, family, and children is it's everything to me. So, but yeah.
Sheldon, so I'm an old dad. I became a father at 41. And I remember thinking when I was young,
that's a real one. Come on.
But Sheldon, I remember when I was young.
That's a great time to figure out whether you want to do it or not too.
But Sheldon, I remember when I was younger thinking, I'm so lucky. I see my friends with young fathers. I have the freedom. I can do what I want. And then when I became a dad, I was like, it would be nice to be a little bit younger, have a little bit more energy. I don't have the energy I did when I was 21. But I think in many ways, just in terms of just knowing who you are and being a bit more established in your career, it was a much easier for me. I just think back to when I was 21, I was still a kid. How was that for you? Like when you first became a father, I know your motivation was because you didn't know how long you're going to be here, but how difficult was it still being basically a big kid, at 21, that having the responsibility? Do you think it made you grow up really quick? And how did it kind of change your views on the world?
Well, Dr. Joseph Strickland, in his teachings with me, one day we were riding down the street and I was like, man, Doc, what's the perfect age to be a dad? And one of the things he said to me was, it's no such thing as a perfect age, right? It's no such thing as a perfect time, right? You could be 41 years old and out of work and had the child and it didn't go right or was up for divorce. It's no real perfect time. So when that moment approached me and I felt, number one, I have a daughter. So for a girl dad, it changed me all the way around, right? Because I would go up to Jade and say, "Hey, baby, come." And she'd be like, "Ah," and I had to change my voice, right? So I found myself, "Oh, little baby," and I am also stepping into the most emotional part of me at that time because on one end, I'm this rough 20-year-old kid doing things he have no business doing, living in that world, right? And on another end, I have to set all of that to the side, lower my voice, be better, but also do what I wanted, what I wish my father had an opportunity to do for me, and that's be there, right? And so at the end of the day, that was the only thing that mattered to me. Nothing else dawned on me like, oh, it's over, it's the end of the world, not anything else or anything of that nature. It was more of, hey, you have a life that you're responsible for. You have a baby girl, and things are different. Now when you live that life as a girl dad, every day you're saying this. I wouldn't want to treat my daughter like this. How do I want the world to treat my daughter, right? And so that drove me even more too as well. And now I look at this 15-year-old young lady who's bilingual, highly intelligent, challenges her father, is extremely artistic, and just a joy of life. I'm grateful for the young lady that she has molded herself to be, but I'm also grateful for that journey of 21 and manning up and taking care of my responsibility. Because again, no child asked to be here. Like we said from the beginning, fatherhood doesn't come with the map or manuals, no perfect time to be a parent. And your job is to be present. Once you make that decision that you want to be an adult, because you had to, if you decided to have a child, now it's your job to live beyond you and to live for something else. And that something else is what changed me, drove me, and made me who I currently am right now.
I absolutely love that. One of the things I find so beautiful in life, Sheldon, is when you can completely change how it was in one generation. So you said, your dad was missing in periods of your life and it was real hard for you. And then in one generation, you have your daughter and she inspires you and you're there in her life. And now you've seen this amazing woman she's growing into. It's just, I think it's so beautiful. Like so many times we can look back at our past and say, people can have a very negative outlook, like, I didn't have any opportunities and my past will dictate my future. And you've shown in one generation, you can completely change the trajectory of your family and your legacy in your life. And I just think that's so powerful because it's so easy to look back and listen, everyone in life has a different position on the starting line, whether it's, do they have both parents in their life? Do they have any physical gifts? Do they have a good support system? Do they come from money? Do they come from nothing? We all start from different places, but I think one of the things that I feel bad for people that just look at where they are today in their past and they think that'll dictate their future. I think that must be such a powerful message for people that you're mentoring is, it'll be one thing if you came from every privilege and you said, hey guys, I want to help you, but you've done it to yourself. You've turned your life around. And I think that they always say with parenting, and I'm sure it's the same with mentoring, it's not what we say, it's what they see us doing. And I think that's what's so powerful about you. And that's why when Victor introduced you to me and I was reading about you, I found that so inspiring. It's like, is you're not just helping people, but first you helped yourself and now you're helping people. I think that's just such a powerful lesson.
Yeah, well, for me, I call it breaking the cycle, right? And so having that chance to break the cycle and be greater is what I'm grateful for. But when I think about the journey of others, some of us lack that grit that we need to overcome our past. A lot of us still live back there. And so a lot of the other work that I do today is speaking to adults that still are affected by their parents or father or mother being in and out of their life and not being there, right? So for many of us, right, no matter what your skin color is, what your economic status is, what your background is, what you have, what you don't have. If you ask a crowd or a room, hey, tell me about when you were a kid, right? If it was good, stand over here. If it wasn't, stand over there. A lot of us are still, affected by our parents either being there or not being there and everything that took place. And when it comes to having the grit to get past it, that is grace as well, right? Because the reality of it is there are things that weigh us down. I just felt like the greatest thing that made me go past that was I had that chance by working at Magic, working with Dr. Strickland, understanding what community organizing was, understanding what developing programming was, being able to get my friends involved in the program. That gave me a different leg up from mentorship, leadership, and support to prepare to launch that way. And during their mentorship time is when I got in trouble and wound up going to jail for armed robbery, right? So I was 17, facing 6 to 30 years in jail. And everyone's like, man, you are great. What's this? And I'm still making mistakes, but trying to make my way out and do something greater. And, and they visited me while I was in jail and wrote me and sent me things and was at all of the court dates and watched the judge give me probation to come out in the universe and do something different. And so again, a lot of us, a lot of times don't get through that. And what I see a lot with a lot of adults that they struggle with is their childhood and what went right or wrong with their parents, or particularly with their father. But what I always tell them is this: any presentation I start, I say, hey, listen, if Dovetail Project would have been around in 1988, would all of us feel this way? Right? Like, there was no programming around to help with dad, right? Like, if you told me, hey, Sheldon, my dad was he's my idol, he's my mentor, I love him, I can almost answer and say, his dad was in his life. Was he? Was your right? And so, so that repeated cycle or breaking the cycle is the difference maker between the two in this work when it comes to parenting, fatherhood, and what we even struggle with as adults, oftentimes trying to get through our childhood and traumas to be better for our children, who eventually one day notice, like, you know what, something wrong with dad, or you know what, something wrong with mama, or you know what, I love dad ways, or I love mom ways, and this is what I'm going to incorporate and be able to do. Well, my parents were married for 52 years. I know what this thing looked like, but that is the luck of the draw, because one thing we can't control is who our parents are from birth.
So true. It really is the lottery, right? Do we have good parents? Sheldon, can you talk a little bit more about that when you were arrested for armed robbery? Like, what was the situation that led to it? Obviously you were a big kid, so it's hard to. But looking back, like, was it just desperation? Was it influence of the wrong people? Like, how did you go down that path?
It was knowing better and not doing better. That's all it was. It's no excuse to take or do anything wrong to any individual. And when you are growing up poor and you figure, hey, the way that I can get some money is going about it in this way, you realize later that, it was the wrong decision. And so it wasn't peer pressure, or it wasn't anyone that influenced me to do anything. I knew better. It was my birthday. I didn't get ice cream or cake. I'm never celebrated. My mom had 5 kids, 4 boys, 1 girl. All I had most of my life was hand-me-downs. And, and I knew better, right? Like, I had these mentors in my ear who expected more from me. I had young people following me who expected more from me. But like anything else, I'm human. I let the world down. And I'm grateful I wasn't 27 when it happened and that I was 17, because I had a chance to show the world who Sheldon Lamar Smith Jr. really is, and what he means, and why it was important that Judge Egan gave me that break and have me here today to make our communities and world a better place. So,
Sheldon, that's so beautiful. There's 2 things that for me really stood out. The first is the kind of man you are, is that you didn't blame other people. You said it was my choice, my bad decision. So I think that's so important. I think anyone that's successful or in a good place in life, they tend to take accountability. And listen, life isn't fair. We can always blame things or blame people. But the fact that you said that, I just think is so powerful. And the other thing I love, and I've been thinking about this a lot recently, is it's so easy for us to often we judge people, especially like celebrities and things like that, on one bad decision, one bad thing they did maybe 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And it's like you're judging someone on their worst moment. And you said it then. You said, we're all human. I've done many things in my life that I'm not proud of. And I think it's a much better way of looking at life and looking at people, is to give them a bit of grace and not judge someone on their worst moment. And I think you're such a good example. like you said, if you were older than 17 and you didn't have the clemency from the judge, and you ended up getting, incarcerated for a long time, the world would have missed out on all the things you're doing. So just try to remember that. I think it's just, for me, that's such a powerful thing. And it's a message that I want to spread is, you're an incredible man. You're doing incredible work. But, you made a bad decision and thankfully, you got past it. But I hate seeing, because I see people all around me do it. You're judging people on their worst moment. And like you said, we are all human. And there isn't a man or woman alive who hasn't done things they regret.
Yeah. And I would also say oftentimes it's hard for many of us to go back to those years, right? We are professionals, we have the big titles, CEO and the president, I'm the chairperson, I'm the treasurer, right? Our titles are so big, but when it's time for us to really go back and think about, hey, before you became a professional at the top part of your career and was elite, you made mistakes. And so that grace and period at times is so hard for us to have that open window to forgive and remember that we were once teenagers who did things wrong too as well. And so, like I said, I'm grateful for my community not giving up on me. I'm grateful for the mentors around me that even when I made the mistake, they stood by my side. And that taught me another level of mentorship. So I was in the office yesterday talking to a young kid. He's 20 years old. And so I was giving him some advice. And he said to me, but Sheldon, I'm trying. And I looked at him and I said, try harder. And so, in those moments, that is what we need, but we also need forgiveness and grace. And that's for any of us across the board, no matter who we are, what age we are, or where we come from.
That's actually really powerful. Sometimes we need tough love, but we also need forgiveness and grace together. That's a really, really powerful concept.
Try harder.
I love that. So, Sheldon, like with these, I guess just generally speaking, with these young dads, 17 to 24, I know how hard fatherhood was for me, and I had it a lot easier than a lot of people, I'm sure. But can you talk a little bit about like what are some of the biggest struggles that they're facing and how you can kind of help them overcome them?
Well, I'll say this, and I want to, make sure, because the world is watching, I want to make sure all of the moms out there, we love you dearly.
Yes.
Well, we need to have a fatherhood conversation right here in this moment. So
yes.
When we think about the biggest thing that hold these young dads back, it's just the narrative first in general of when we think about dad, right? When we think about dad, he gets this one day in June that's celebrated half a day, and time passes. But when Mother's Day come around, the flowers are out and everybody's looking for mom and everything else of that nature. So the first thing for many of our young fathers is, hey, look, it's no help and support out here for me. And so when you look at the Dovetail Project, we are a 100% volunteer-based initiative. These young men come to us from all walks of life. We have young men that are sheriffs. We have young men who have their bachelor's degree, associate's degree. We have young men that work in the field of philanthropy. And then we have young men who are struggling to get to the place that they're going to. So the Dovetail Project is not just an initiative working with young fathers, 17 to 24, and all of these young fathers are down on their luck. A lot of these young men are saying, hey, I don't have the mapping manual, or my dad wasn't there, or my dad is there. He the one signed me up for it. He want to make sure that I'm double ready, right, to be the greatest dad in the world. And so when I think about our work in working on the front lines in the field of fatherhood, in the world of philanthropy, you can't tell a philanthropist where their capital should go. So let me be clear about that. But fatherhood is underfunded. It's not talked about enough. It's underdeveloped, and it is not analyzed the same. But we know that this is a critical solution. So oftentimes, you hear people talk about workforce development or mentorship for you 14 to 18. If they don't have strong parents, then they can make it out statistically. They could get through, but it's 10 times harder to be able to do so. So when we think about the work of fatherhood and in working with these fathers and dads, and that biggest journey, the biggest journey for many of these young men is, I can't locate help. My dad isn't there. I have this child. I'm working and making great dollars in my career. I'm in the union, in the carpenter union, and I'm a journeyman. I make great money, but I can't find help. I need somebody to talk to about what what I need to do at the doctor's appointment, or, me and her, we're having a tough breakup right now, how to get custody of my child, or she wind up getting incarcerated and now I have a chance to go to court to get custody and just don't understand how to get through those moments and points. And so the Dovetail Project is that hub that provides that guidance. And I wouldn't say the not just guidance, I would say it's the mapping manual for young dads 17 to 24 across the country. So
I love that. I remember you just reminded me of a conversation I had when I was I was probably a young teenager, and I was complaining to my dad about something. And I remember he looked at me and he said, son, he was in his late 20s when he had me. So he wasn't too young, but he was still quite young. He said, son, there's no manual for fatherhood, and I did my best. And it was a very raw, honest, candid thing. And I saw because when you're a young teenager, you think your dad always has the answers, and he always knew. You just assumed he did. But now when I think back, I remember when I turned 45, and I was like, wow, I was 16 when my dad was my age, and I've now got a kid who's a couple years old. It's so easy to see your father as knowing everything. But I think even now at 45, I don't know anything. If I was in a custody battle, I don't know how the US law system, the legal system works. There's so many things that we just don't know. And I'm a big believer, Sheldon, in knowledge is power. And just by you giving them that manual, that must be it's just really beautiful. It's just so useful and so needed.
It is. And so what else I would add to them having that manual, when you think about it, again, from your standpoint, you say, hey, Sheldon, have my dad there, an amazing man that helped me get through, right? And it's still like, and so for many for me and most of the young men that we serve, it's the complete opposite, right? And so being on that opposite side of the world and trying to figure it out, one, but then two, when you think about exactly what you just said with having a father present in your life who had you late in his 20s, he made a healthy decision in thinking about you. He did his best, right? And that's all he could do, right? That's all we can do as parents is do our best. But for many of us that don't have that father to look at and point at or complain to, where do we go or where do they go to get that help and support, right? And that, and oftentimes when this conversation takes place, it's like, but moms need help and support. And I, again, mom, we love you. I was raised by a single mother, but let's be truthful. If a mother needs help and support with housing, food, other essential goods, those items are there. And it's not just there because the world is playing favoritism on mom. It's there because mom is important, but when you look at it, it's the soft and fuzzy thing. When you look at dad, he got hair all over his face, hair all over his head. He's coming to you like, hey, look, I need Pampers, wipe, and formula. You're wondering what's going wrong with him, when in fact, he's a police officer. He's doing well. He's 23 years old. He's just looking for a program to better himself. He just happened to look that way, right? And so we can't judge a book by its cover, and greater conversations like what we're having right now need to take place because, again, this is not the month of June. And so for Dovetail Project, Father's Day is every day. And so right now, this is one of those moments where we're not in the month of June having this conversation about a subject that's so near and dear to many of our hearts. We're having it in this present time. So again, I am grateful, and the journey of fatherhood continues.
I love that. And I know you keep saying it, but it's true. It's like, just because we're talking about the need for fathers to get support, it doesn't negate the fact how wonderful mothers are. And, they go through the whole pregnancy process of giving birth, and they're giving life, but it is true that the system is set up to support single moms, but a lot of time the fathers are kind of left out. And I don't know too much how it is state to state in the US, but I know that one of my good friends, he has two boys, and he went through a very nasty divorce. And at the time, they're from Chicago, but they moved to New York. And she's a very high-powered attorney, and she's basically blocked him from seeing his boys. And it's tearing him apart. And I just think it's because obviously they had a very bad divorce, so she has a lot of anger towards him. But how does she not see that she's doing a massive disservice to her two boys by not letting their father, who loves them and he wants to be in their life, not letting them see him? So I think, I don't know if you're dealing with some of that same thing in Illinois, but the law in a lot of states, I've got a friend in California, the same thing. His ex-wife won't let him see his daughter, and he's fighting it in the courts. And it's just, I hear those stories, and that really breaks my heart.
Yeah, well, that's one of our favorite parts of our curriculum, which is our felony street law component, which talks about family law and the criminal justice system. So we've had many moms come up to us at graduation and say, "So you all taught him felony street law? He knows about the
No,
courts now, right?" And so I think oftentimes, many times, children are caught up in the middle of adult casualties,
yeah,
right? Back to that lucky place. You can't pick who your parents are. You're just born here, right? And so we hope and pray that those effects of the divorce don't affect the children in such a way where things go wrong. But children are often caught up in the middle. And the greatest part, most of us as men, no matter how powered we are, don't really know how to advocate. So to learn that at such a young age, right, to be able to say, "Hey, look, no, it's not like that. This is how you petition for no." Being able to get those learnings early is the reason why we address the work. We know that, hey, a father could wake up every morning, do everything right, go to work, handle his business, get it done, but then relationships do end. And when they end, children are in the middle. And oftentimes dad's trying to figure out what to do. The courts are siding with mom. And so for us, we said, hey, look, we want to put a state-of-the-art curriculum together that empowers these young men to not only go through and get parenting skills and life skills, but for them to also be able to go to the courts and advocate for custody. And many of our young men have went back to get custody of their children, and we're grateful for what we've been able to do to help them do so, and being in court with them as witnesses and providing a judge letters of recommendation and other supports for dad to see him win and get this great moment in his life. Because for many of us, our children are our life. And when we don't have them, we feel lifeless. And it's not a great thing. So, my heart goes out to that couple you spoke about and to their children. But oftentimes children are caught up in the middle of adult casualties. So that's it's just the nature of relationships, but it's unfortunate.
yes, totally. Sheldon, what can I ask you? Obviously you've grown so much since you first became a father. Your daughter's 15 now. If you don't mind me asking, I'm always curious because you're so much further along the path than me. But is there some struggles you've had in terms of your own journey of fatherhood, maybe in the past few years, where you've obviously established yourself and you're incredibly successful, like you said, you got the titles, you got the awards, but parenting is hard, and I'm sure there must be some struggles that you're still dealing with even now.
Well, I would probably say my greatest struggle is in my head, right? Because again, I have this, my greatest struggle is in my head. But I want to give you an example of something. I was at an event and I was speaking to a gentleman, and he was like, yeah, my daughter's 13 and she's going on 30. And I was like, yeah, my daughter's 13 and she's just going on 14. So my relationship with my baby girl is extraordinary. And because she's an only child, we have no secrets. We're best friends. And what's in my head is when she eventually start dating and go off to college and right. But I'm not experiencing those things that I've heard, like, hey, look, when she turned 13 or 15, she's going to be sassy. Or I have a very respectful young beautiful daughter who is just a great human and have been poured into not just by me, but by her grandparents and mentors and uncles and aunts. And she take life serious. So, but if I had to one thing, it's not even, I tell my daughter all the time, I say, baby girl, some people say it just to say it. But I'm fortunate to have you as my daughter. And I'm just fortunate to have her. I have a young lady that's not a problem child. And I have a journey of fatherhood that has been complete for me. And so that's just my journey. And I won't say it's like that because I run Dovetail Project or I founded a fatherhood organization. I'll say it's like that because I still cry to my baby girl. I still love on my baby girl. I still kiss on my baby girl. She's still sitting in the back seat of the truck, right? She's probably 5'9". She's still sitting in the back seat. So we have those moments of love and time with each other. And it means the world to me. And I'm fortunate enough to be able to say that. So
That's so beautiful. I think one of the advice that I kept getting from people, because I'd always ask people, Sheldon, my son's turning 4, and I want to hear from dads like you who are 10 years further along in the journey, like, what do you wish you knew when your kid was my age? Like, what can you tell me? And one theme kept coming back is, obviously we all have to work, we have responsibilities, but when you're with them, be present. Don't be physically next to them, but playing on your phone or your mind's a million miles away. All they want is your presence and like your attention. And I think that's becoming harder and harder now with the digital age, and we have all these distractions, and our brains are so fragmented. And I think that's so beautiful. It sounds like you have such a great bond, but just when you're with her, you're really with her. And I think it sounds simple, but it's not easy.
Well, I would also say it's the thing I yearned for, right? Like, so my dad, an incredible man, when he was around as a as when I was younger, when my dad was in and out, I think I hurt the worst because this is a great man. This is a great guy. This is someone you would want to be around all day. He's funny. I get my look, my talk, my swag, and everything from him, right? And so he is this loving and caring individual too, as well. And what I wanted to be able to push out, particularly with my daughter, is me and her having that bond, but her knowing there was a chief of police that we had an opportunity to interview. And so I'll never forget the chief of police for the city of Chicago in like the year of 2022. He said, listen, I lost my son tragically. And one of the things that I would look back on and say is when he fell in love with certain things, I didn't fall in love with those things. I allowed him to fall in love with cars and I still was working. He fell in love with, and so everything that my daughter has been able to fall in love with, from coloring to art to band to film, I've done my best to be there to provide advice, but also to play around with those things with her too as well. One of the things I think about though, when Jada was 4 years old, like, yeah, even then, like, it was still a spectacular moment in time where I didn't feel like I wouldn't see the day. And again, I think it's just in my head. My only concern in life, because I lived it every day like something would happen to me, is to give her my all. Now, if I didn't have that in me at the age of 20, I don't think I'll be able to say that today. But every time I'm with my baby girl, I'm trying to give her everything in me like she'll never see me again, right? Like, and that, that's a crazy thing to live by, but that's my truth, right? Like, man, I thought I wouldn't be here when she was 4, and I'm still here. Like, she 10, I'm still here. She's 15, and I'm over it, right? Like, I'm here, right? And so that drove me to be truthful, honest, there, love on her, kiss on her, everything that I could think of. Because the only thing really ran through my head was, if something happened to me, what memories of me she's gonna have? And I want to have the greatest memories in the world. So if you've ever spoken to a young person that has lost a parent, they all, they could tell you, I was a little older. My dad was great. He was, and so I was trying to predict and project that. And that's the energy that I used. But now she's 15. It's like, was that the right energy to use? But obviously it was, if we are where we are right now today. So I would say that is my growth spurt to now as a parent, particularly in my journey.
Sheldon, that is so powerful. And I'll tell you why. Because most people, if they knew they had a terminal illness and they only had a year left, they would make drastic changes in their life. They would do things that are much more urgent. They wouldn't put off things they're putting off, thinking, I've got all the time in the world. But if you think about it, no one knows when our end is coming. So I think by you having that mindset actually probably made you so much of a better man and a better father and a better husband, because you don't know. And I think that's actually the mindset that I'm trying to live my life. And I have this irrational fear of like, oh, what if this thing happens to me and I don't get to see my boy become a man? And it drives me to be more present and to be in his life more and prioritize him more. So I think that's so beautiful that you've lived like that. I think more people should have a bit more urgency. Don't put off things. Oh, I'll do it next year. I'll do it next decade. Like, the things that are important to you, you have to do today, because we don't know our future.
Well, I wish it was a natural urgency, but unfortunately for me, it was through trauma that led me there. But I do think if we all live that way, parenting would look and feel different. But, we all feel like some of us feel like we'll be here forever. And some of us feel that we do have a calling time. So.
I love that. Sheldon, can I ask, there's one thing, and we can talk off air about this too, but someone like me actually just saw a friend of mine he's kind of a mentor figure. He's in his 50s. He's a new grandfather. He's unbelievably successful. And he pulled me aside and he said, Lawrence, you should really think about doing some mentoring. I think you could help a lot of young men, and they need figures like you in their life. And it's something that I've been thinking about. I think, I really believe that you meet people for a reason, and Victor connected us for a reason, and I'm talking to you for a reason. Is there a place for volunteers, for volunteer mentors, or like, what are you looking for your next step for the Dovetail Project?
Oh, yeah. So at the Dovetail Project, we're always looking for amazing volunteers to come join us and help to impact our young men and professionals who bring that story and journey, right? And so one time I had a gentleman say, he said, Sheldon, look, I'm a white man. I can't really impact the room. And I told him, well, we talking about the subject of fatherhood, right?
Yeah.
Has no color, has no money amount, has no community. It's central, right? Like, hey,
Yes.
We all know what it means to change Pampers and feed the baby and go through the rigmaroles and figure out, that landing place for marriage and get started. So we're always open to have individuals come out and mentor and volunteer their time, no matter where they're from, what they're doing, what their background is, to join us at the Dovetail Project with all that we do for the father. So
I love that. Well, listen, I'm definitely going to reach out to you about getting involved, and I'll give you the last word. I'll put links to your website and anything else you want to kind of end with, just for people to if they want to help a little bit in your journey, because I've been blessed. This is about 155 podcasts I've done, and you're one of the most inspirational forces of nature. It's amazing what you're doing, and it really inspires me, and I'm sure other people will be inspired too.
I'm grateful. And so I would tell everyone out there, if you are someone that your father has made a difference in your life, please come and learn about the Dovetail Project and all that we do to help and save fathers. If you are in any other place around the country and not here in Chicago, and you can find your local fatherhood initiative near your backyard to support young people in your community, I'm encouraging you to take a look at those agencies too as well. We believe in empowering the field of fatherhood, and we know that the Dovetail Project is just one drop, but for many of us, we continuously need that help and support across the board. And then finally, if you have an inkling within you because your fatherhood journey wasn't right, I'm asking you to please forgive your father. Please forgive him a second chance. Please get involved with our organization and continue to help us impact the community and children and fathers and families in our city. So I thank you so much, Lawrence, for giving me this chance and opportunity. And I just want to end with just telling you, this work is about making sure that all boats rise together to continue to impact the next generation of children and providing fathers, families, moms and dads the tools and skills that they need to be greater. So thank you so much.